Alright, it's time to discuss some more Modern Horizons 2 previews, and you may be asking yourselves, why are you so late to the party? Previews have been happening for several days. Well, the answer is simple. After filming and fully editing a very long video, I lost it. So, that sucked. And what do you do when you run into some obstacles when you're trying to accomplish something? You just give up and cry yourself to sleep. But then the next day you wake up and you try again. So here we are, finally getting to some Modern Horizons 2 previews. Steven with Magic Metal Money. We're going to start off strong with Grist, the one everyone wants to talk about. Grist the Hunger Tide. 1 green, 1 black, 1 generic, enters the battlefield with 3 loyalty. We'll get to the state-based effect in just a moment, but for now, loyalty abilities. +1, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token, then mill a card. If an insect card was milled this way, put a loyalty counter on Grist and repeat this process. -2, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, destroy target creature or planeswalker. -5, each creature loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Right off the bat, first thing I think of is this better than Liliana of the Veil? It competes with it in the mana curve and for the slot because it kind of does some of the same stuff, so is it better than Liliana? My first glance is no, but it's also so different, I actually don't think that's fair. I think it's just apples and oranges. Secondly, this also disqualifies you from having Lurrus as a companion. Is it worth that? And maybe, depending on the other cards in your deck, because having Lurrus as a companion is one of the strongest things you could be doing in Modern. But honestly, this card is so different than Liliana that I think it's worth diving into a little deeper. First of all, the +1 of making creatures on just a 3 mana planeswalker, that's really powerful. Being able to create different bodies, really strong, and hey, if you ever do this thing and you actually for some reason have an insect creature in your deck, and you get 2, that's nuts. You can ultimate the next turn. You can ultimate on turn 4 if your graveyard's full and it's worth it. But just knowing you're to stack up the loyalty is pretty crazy. And will you have insects in your deck? Probably not. You'll probably just have other copies of Grist. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to talk about the state-based effect in just a moment. Let's focus on the -2 ability. This is really, really strong. The fact that you can destroy any creature regardless of CMC, like this isn't a Fatal Push, this is a Terminate, that's really, really powerful. And also snagging planeswalkers, just being able to destroy a planeswalker, really strong. I think this -2 ability is strong enough that it makes this card a real contender. I mean, you can think of even random scenarios where it's like, oh, you have lethal on board, but they have a blocker. Well, you can play a creature from your hand and then sack the creature with Summoning Sickness in order to destroy their blocker and swing for lethal. There's going to be things like that that'll be interesting gameplay. And ultimately, I think this card needs to be played with to really understand how good it is. And then obviously, you can always sack the actual tokens they have that it makes itself in order to kill something the following turn after making an insect token the turn you play it. But let's get to the state-based effect, because this is what is absolutely bonkers. As long as Grist the Hunger Tide isn't on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types. First thing I thought of when I saw this was Green Sun Zenith. This is bonkers. The fact that you can go get yourself a planeswalker with things like Green Sun Zenith and Court of Calling and Collected Company, this totally changes the game. And also the fact that not only can you get a planeswalker, which has repeated value turn after turn, but it's also a kill spell. Like, that's awesome. Obviously, this is going to be played in a creature deck if you're doing that type of thing with Coco and Court of Calling and things. So the fact that you can go and get this and then just sack like your Bird of Paradise or whatever if it's in the mid or late game and then destroy an enemy creature or planeswalker, very, very strong. I think this card is absolutely going to see play, and ultimately, this kind of seems like the card that it reminds me a lot of Wrenn and 6. Because Wrenn and 6, we all knew, if you remember, back in the day when we first saw Wrenn and 6 being previewed, everyone knew it was good. But no one knew how good it was going to be until you started playing with it. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this card's way better than I thought. I think we're going to see the same thing with the Grist. There's so much going on here. And the fact that it's a creature when it's not on the battlefield, including in your hand and in the graveyard, right? You can obviously get this thing back and it's naturally milling. It looks like it's a very Golgari theme where you're doing some self-mill graveyard value. This looks very, very strong. And I think it's going to be a definite Modern player for a long time coming. I'm not going to get to every card that's been previewed, of course, and I'm not even going to get to every card that I previously filmed in my last video because so many new cards have been previewed that video would now be like 30 minutes long. But we're going to get to some main ones, and I'm actually really, really excited for Prismatic Ending. It's a 1 white X sorcery converge. Exile target non-land permanent if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of colors of mana spent to cast this spell. Is this going to be some game-changing format warping removal spell? No, but I think this is really, really powerful. And if you're playing some type of 3-color, Abzan, Jeskai, Esper, value, mid-range, or control deck, This looks really powerful as a 1 over a 2 of. This is like Maelstrom Pulse, but it exiles, and because it can snag absolutely anything, right? It's not just creatures or planeswalkers, artifacts, enchantments, all that stuff. And the fact that it exiles is really key with, I don't know, Heliod? There's been a whole bunch of Squirrel cards previewed. They look like a lot of fun. I don't think any of these really are modern staples or going to be constructed staples, but they're definitely going to see play in Commander. And yeah, you're going to see some fun FNM modern decks that are going to be Squirrel Tribal. And you know, as much as you want to pride yourself on being a strong modern player, you're going to lose to Squirrel Tribal. And that's just the way it is. They have a Lord now. Like, they're official. Squirrels are an official tribe with a Lord and everything. Lucid Dream, not the most powerful card ever, but I do want to point out just how beautiful the art is on Lucid Dream. Like, this card looks really cool. And overall, for the set, that's something I've noticed. There is just a lot of beauty in the set and a lot of fun. Like, a lot of these cards are just fun Magic cards. And yeah, honestly, so far, I don't think this is going to have nearly the impact on Modern as Modern Horizons 1 did, and maybe that's intentional, but as far as like just major instant, you know, Hogak constructed cards destroying the format, but this looks like a lot of fun, and that's something that's just at the heart of Magic really important. Regardless of why you love Magic, if you're just in it for investing, or flipping, or you have a local game store that you run, or you want to be a pro player or a casual player, at the end of the day, any of those goals are only going to be accomplishable because of the fact that the game is fun. And this set looks like a lot of fun. Priest of Fell Rites, this card looks absolutely bonkers. 1 white, 1 black, 2/2 human warlock. Tap, pay 3 life, sacrifice Priest of Fell Rites, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. And it has Unearth for 5 mana, which just means if it's in the graveyard, you can bring it back with haste for a turn. Wow. This card is nutso. It was released and spoiled by Channel Fireball, and Reed Duke wrote an article about it. I highly recommend you check out that article. It's really, really good. He's got some great insights. This card looks bonkers. The fact that it is an enabler that if it gets milled over, you still have access to is really strong. You can bring it back without, it doesn't take any mana to activate its ability to bring back your Grizzlebrand. This looks nuts. I think this is going to be really powerful. I mean, it has like that Unburial Rites vibe where if it's in your graveyard, you still get access to your enabler. Really strong card. Definitely going to see play in Modern. Torok's Canticle. Sorcery. 3, 1 black. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a card from it. That player discards that card, then discards a card at random. Is this going to see play in Modern Constructed? No, definitely not. Why am I bringing this card up? Look at the flavor text. The same hymns Torok sang to praise the Ebon Praetor would later be adapted to glorify Torok himself. Is this a hint? Is this an Easter egg? Is this a game within the game of spoiler season and Wizards saying we're going to get him to Turok? That was my original hope and prayer, and sure, him, whatever. But we got Turok spoiled himself, so I'm not so sure anymore. I'm still holding out. I'm still holding out hope we're going to get him to Turok, but maybe not, because they've done the Torok theme with giving us Torok himself, which does look like a strong card. Torok Dread Chanter. 1 generic, 1 black. Kicker, black, black. Pro white. Whenever an opponent discards a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Torok. Oh, it's a 2/1 as well. When it enters the battlefield, if its kicker cost was paid, target opponent discards 2 cards at random. So that means on turn 4, you can now be getting a Hymn to Turok effect as an ETB for a 2/1 creature. And then it'll grow, and it will become a 4/3 creature, still dies to bolt. I don't know. I just don't know. Like, maybe this is good. Like, being able to Hymn to Turok on turn 4 isn't horrible, but, I mean, it's still disrupting your opponent. It's like, maybe that is good, but is it better than, like, Bloodbraid Elf? Obviously, it's, you know, going to be in a different shell, potentially with its cost, because now you're paying triple black for this effect, so you really can't be playing this in Jund. Like, you could definitely play it in, obviously, mono black, but probably the Rock, too. You probably, if you want to go triple black by turn 3, and you're not doing major green stuff like Scavenging Ooze, but I don't know, I'm just not convinced this is super powerful, and I'm really holding out hope for him. Subtlety is the next card. It's part of the Grief cycle, so these cards that you can play for 0 mana. It's a 2 blue 3/3 flash flyer, so not a bad body. When it enters the battlefield, choose up to 1 target creature spell or planeswalker spell. Its owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library, and then of course you can evoke it by exiling a blue card from your hand. Okay, right off the bat, I do think this is pretty strong. I wondered during the last couple months if we would get some type of Force of Negation counterpart, right? So for creatures and threats that aren't non-creature spells, and we got it. Like, we definitely got it. This is very interesting. I think it's really strong. It's interesting how it's not an actual true counterspell. It's not like a force of negate for creatures, right? It's actually just a force of will that puts it back on its library. It only gives you a 1-turn reprieve. So will this see play? I definitely think so. Is it going to be an automatic 4 of? No, it's not force of will. But in the right metagames, you might see 1, 2, maybe even 3 of these things, depending on what's going on. If everyone's playing, Death Shadow and things like that, I mean, there are other ways to deal with creatures. Creatures aren't the biggest threats in the world, but having this in a pinch could be pretty useful. Chatterstorm, fun card, pairs well with Sylvan Anthem. Looks like it's going to be some fun green stuff going on here. We got the Underworld Cookbook. This card is beautiful and fun, and man, is this a callback to the beginning. This goes all the way back to Alpha. We had some flavor text from Asmore. Really interesting card, cool design, just unique. Again, always stretching the limits of what it means to be a Magic card. This thing's crazy. You can pay it for 1 mana for its madness, or as long as you've discarded a card. This looks really strong. Everyone's all excited about this Imperial Recruiter, some new card that's never really been printed before. I don't know why everyone's so excited. That doesn't really look that powerful. Probably a $2 mythic. I mean, just like a bulk mythic. I don't know. What could you possibly be doing by going to get a creature with power 2 or less? Like, how is that a strong thing to do? I don't understand it. Wrapping up the day here with Sfleelun, God of Sea and Sky. I definitely nailed that pronunciation. 1 generic blue, legendary creature, Merfolk God. If you control 2 other merfolks, it is indestructible. Whenever it attacks, you draw a card. Other merfolk you control have ward 1, and it's a 3/4 body. It's a big body, big boy. And then ward 1, of course, is if your merfolk get targeted by a spell and ability your opponents control, counter that unless they pay the ward cost, in this case 1 generic mana. I think this is definitely strong. People are really excited about merfolk, and obviously this comes with Rishadan Dockhand, so this is going to be some definite buffs for the Merfolk deck. It's never been the strongest tribal deck in the world, but there's some major players, and I could see it coming back and making a bigger splash in the game. That's it for today. We'll be doing more of these videos as spoiler season continues. I will do them more often, assuming that I don't continue to have problems and spend hours and hours filming and editing, only to have that video lost. So assuming that doesn't happen, I'll be posting again within 48 hours. Thanks. If you're new here, tune in, subscribe, then you'll get the notifications, and these videos will pop up in your feed so you can show up and watch the video next time, and also share this with a friend.